If we could all come back to order and please be seated. If I can ask the clerk to let the next speaker come forward, please.
Good afternoon, council members and commissioners. My name is Glenna Citron, and I live here in Carlsbad. Regarding the goal of 100% clean energy, you might be wondering, how would we achieve that? How would we implement it? So I'd like to talk to you about community choice energy, also known as community choice aggregation. Community choice is an opportunity for Carlsbad to provide residents, businesses, and schools an alternative to our monopoly utility that delivers more clean energy at better rates. Community Choice is a nonprofit electricity provider that would give Carlsbad control over rate setting and what type of energy we get, while SDG&E would continue to own and maintain the electrical grid. The California cities that have adopted community choice are getting more clean energy at lower rates than that is offered by their respective monopoly utilities. Moreover, the community choice nonprofits are investing in local clean power generation and incentive programs. With that comes more economic development and jobs. Solana Beach and Encinitas are actively exploring community choice. San Diego and Chula Vista included it in their climate action plans. These cities found, and this is really important, that adoption of choice provides the largest reduction of greenhouse gas emissions of all the local policy actions available to them, thereby greatly enhancing their ability to meet their greenhouse gas targets. The revised general plan, section 9, page 14, states, support a regional approach to study the feasibility of establishing a community choice aggregation or another plan that increases the renewable energy supply on the electrical grid. It's good that it was added to the general plan. It would be even better if it were added to the climate action plan as a complement to the 100% renewable energy goal, as was done in San Diego with the support of the mayor and the council. Please add community choice aggregation to the climate action plan. Thank you.
Mayor Hall, City Council. My name is Graham Thorley, and you can put a name to the face of all the stuff you've been getting from me lately. I want to discuss what has not been discussed here, and that's the elephant in the room, the airport. In 1975, Mayor Robert Frazee sent the Board of Supervisors a letter saying that Carlsbad was opposed to the use of the airport for commercial uses. In 1979, the citizens petitioned that led to CUP Conditional Land Use Permit 172 and Ordinance 2153-015, which does give Carlsbad some authority over the airport and the use of the airport. Now, the general plan virtually has nothing in it regarding the airport. But in the executive summary 3.12-2, the proposed general plan may result in a change of air traffic patterns, including either the increase of traffic levels or the change in location, resulting in substantial risk. And according to the general plan, this is less classified as less significant. Anything that will increase substantial risk, I would think, would be highly significant. Right now, the county of San Diego is projecting that presently Carlsbad Airport will service about 120,000 people this year. If their proposed expansion goes through, they're looking at almost a little over 3 million passengers, which equates to probably 10 million cars annually increase just to support those 3 million passengers, and tons of pollution that's not discussed in any of your projections, either the 2007 summer or winter or your 2035 projections. It is not there. There are presently 19 schools that are going to be affected by the pollution from that airport, and nobody seems to be interested in it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council, Commissioners. My name is Cindy Veen, and I'm here to talk about an area in our downtown area. First of all, I just want to say I cannot even imagine the amount of work, the consideration, detailed thought, and genius of ideas that it must take to create a new general and master plan. So thank you all for your good work in that respect. And I'm going to speak to the downtown area, as I mentioned, and the considerations that concern me are south of Carlsbad Village Drive, starting with Oak Street and going south, which is commonly known as the Barrio area. I think that a lot of that area, which is on Tyler now, needs to be rezoned to commercial. It is currently zoned light industrial, which is pretty bad. Has a lot of old auto repair places on it. And I would like to start with the corner that my husband and I own, which is on the corner of Oak and Tyler. And it's not a very attractive looking smog shop and a car repair place and a real attractive cafe at the moment. But it does need to be updated, and I would love to see that whole area going from Oak down to Chestnut rezoned on Roosevelt and on Tyler to commercial zoning, and not necessarily into mixed use, because it seems like to me that the mixed use zoning ends up being mostly residential with a very little bit of commercial or business down below it. So I'm looking at getting a little better added value for that area. I'd love to see it evolve into something such as an updated Cedros, which we are all familiar with in the Solana Beach area in our future. And so I'd love to see that it get rezoned and reclaimed from the mishmash of structures without any aesthetic architecture to them at this time, to a more current, updated, nice area, so people who could come down would come down there and shop, relax, enjoy the business community, smell the coffee or the ocean, enjoy a good brew, meal or glass of wine in a clean, safe, charming environment, which is what our village affords us now in a limited space. This would just add on to our village area. We need to expand it. We can't keep a good beach town down, and I think that there is a better long-range choice to be made in that area. I also think that other than Cedros, we could turn it into maybe an old town area, which would retain the historical, cultural
Cindy?
feel.
We thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sherry Alvarado. I live at 3331 Tyler. My husband's family has been in the area since 1937 in Carlsbad. I'm talking in regards to the crossing, railroad crossing at Chestnut and Hap. I thank you for putting it in the 30-year plan. I know hopefully we can do dredging from Carlsbad, all through Carlsbad, and do a crossing at Chestnut so that the people in the Highlands as well as ourselves can get to the beach and the people from the beach to the Pine Street Senior Center. If we could do that, that'd be wonderful. I like the idea of the bike trails all the way through. That's wonderful. If we could get a quiet zone in Carlsbad, as they have over, I believe, in Del Mar. Also, too, if we can have like lighting, like the blinking lights that you have at PCH. If we could get those, I know Dover Coal's looking at putting the turnarounds, but it still doesn't make it for safe crossing for the people from the senior center, Tyler Court, to get to the senior center, or the people who live on the other side to come over to our area. So I would encourage it at Chestnut, and Chestnut, the reason for Chestnut is because that's the one that leads to the bike trail. We've got a lot of people handicapped. Those streets are really wide. If we could get, at crossing the blinking lights, so you don't have to stop at Chestnut and Roosevelt, Chestnut and Madison, and that would be wonderful. Also, too, if you could maybe think about this is the barrio that I live in. We have a lot of history. We will always have a lot of history. The definition of barrio means Spanish-speaking community. As you know, a lot of people are now buying in the area, and they're buying $500,000 to $1 million. They would like to have you guys consider them as part of the village. The village from lagoon to lagoon, freeway to ocean. They would really appreciate. They feel that barrio kind of gives a depressed, meaning. So if you would take that into consideration, Old Carlsbad Village Association would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Jane Norman. Members of the City Council and Planning Commission, my family has owned our property on Chestnut and Valley for nearly 70 years. I grew up there. Thank you. Things like that happen. It's not a perfect world. Okay. My family has owned the property on Chestnut and Valley for nearly 70 years. I grew up there as well as my 5 siblings. My mother, who is 94, and my brother still live on the property. Today, the property is an active farm growing flowers, but in the not too future, it will become housing for new families. We are concerned that this general plan update would negatively affect that future development. The baseline density for our property would allow approximately 10 units. Physically, the property could hold 14 units. To be considered for any additional units above the 10, there must be available units in the pool of unused units for our specific geographic area in the excess dwelling unit bank. We certainly understand why the city is transferring unused units, but when it has the potential to transfer value from one property owner to another, it must be done with care. What we are asking is that the pool of unused units in our area not to be depleted to the point that future developments in our area are locked into the baseline density simply because there are no unused units available. Thank you very much.
For the record, could you give us the address of the piece of property you're at?
It's 1785 Chestnut Avenue, Carlsbad, California. It's across the street from the Carlsbad High School. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Keston. I'd like to thank the mayor, thank the city council and the planning commission for allowing us to be here and to speak today. But more importantly, I'd like to thank all of these people. Many of us came out here today to show that we really care about the community that we deeply love. I'm a pulmonary physician. I'm a newbie here. I've only lived here for 2 years, and I live here because I love it. I work in Orange County, so I travel that I-5 every day, and when I'm near Carlsbad, I know that I'm home, and I love it and want to continue loving it. I'd like to oppose the amendments in zoning because I think that they're contrary to the goals and the policies that you have so elucidated so clearly to us that are here today. And it's also contrary to the Ponto Vision Plan that I've read. 4 major points I'd like to address. Number 1, we've addressed the mobility needs, and I think this plan would cause significant problems with this. Traffic issues on Ponto would be very significant. The parking on the roads is already at a premium. And in addition, high-density zoning will attract visitors to this lovely community, and all of those visitors don't have sufficient parking spots as allocated in the design that we were originally allowed to see. Number 2, another issue that was brought up already, the density in schools. Each one of those units may have 2.2 children that will be attending our wonderful schools here. We need to make provisions and plans to school those children appropriately and to make sure that there's space and teachers and educational opportunities available for them locally, that they don't need to relocate. The third issue that wasn't really brought up by many other people is that of water, a very precious natural resource. Water's running out here. There are communities in southern Spain that have been planned. They're gorgeous, lovely condos, lovely residences, and some of them are literally desert areas because there's insufficient water to provide for the population to live. They can't live there anymore. I would hate to see that happen. Finally, from my point of view, there's perhaps a decrease in the commercial space that is available. I think that the plan could incorporate commercial space that the community will enjoy. We want to live in our community. We want to stay here. We want to, again, go for coffee, enjoy lunches with our friends and neighbors, perhaps a bicycle shop, and the community members will have listed items that they would like in that residential or the retail development. And finally, the item that is least well explained by categories is just this gestalt of, I love to be here. I want to be proud. When we go into the other part, the downtown part of Carlsbad, and that big sign is there, I take pictures of it and I send it to my kids. They live on the East Coast. We're the ones who escaped the snow and the miserable weather from New York and Connecticut. I want to be proud of my community. I want that Southern Gateway to be there, and I want to continue to be proud of that.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I thank you for having our comments today. My name is Ellen Falls. I live on 358 Windsock Way in Carlsbad. I'm, again, part of the San Pacifico community. I'm also a board member of Vistamar and on the landscape committee for the San Pacifico Association, which includes landscape along the Avenida Encinitas Road. At this time, water is a very big deal in our community, even with respect to landscaping, let alone using it for any other things. In fact, we've been dealing with the city, I think, someone to try to bring in recycled water. We don't have any. The addition of more dense population and more the population that will be coming in is not going to be able to be supported at this time the way it should be laid out. I was here during the last plan that was presented to the council several years ago. I remember hordes of people down there complaining, but now, in retrospect, everyone's looking at the former plan saying, well, why don't we adopt that one? It looks better than this one. It just gets worse and worse. Our area, Ponto, is the gateway to Carlsbad when you're driving north and coming up on the south. A thing that has not been addressed in the entire general plan are our particular streets. Avenida Encinas, Poinsettia, and the Coast Highway basically squares off our community. And with the addition of people, it's going to be worse than it is now. We've been fighting for years on Avenida Encinas to put a signal in at Portage Way, which is a main thoroughfare to most of the community, and Avenida Encinas. Daily, there are people running that stop sign. We have a stop sign. We hear brakes screeching. There's been several near misses. This has not been addressed. Then we get at the end where this planned community is. There's daily U-turns, people running over to get to the beach parking on the other side. This plan does not address any beach parking. The other thing I just wanted to mention, with this increased density, I know there's low income, but there's also market value condos. And on our side of the 5, the city has already approved beach rentals or vacation rentals. And I am sure that the amount of condos that are going to be proposed here, several will be being purchased to become vacation rentals. Now, those people will be looking for more commercial space to enjoy themselves, hang out at the beach, and also to, just pick up something to eat, just as they do from the campgrounds. They're always coming up our street, and Ralph's, which is the only area right now, is really impacted. I think this plan, to approve this high density in our area on Ponto, has to be revisited, and even look at the previous plan to compare, and perhaps we can work out a better sense of where we're going. This is actually a 20-year plan, so it doesn't have to all be done this next couple of years. I thank you very much for your time and for your patience.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Haltonen. I live in La Costa. I'm representing an unorganized group of La Costa residents, including Crystal Harris, who she is unable to be here today. When one thinks of La Costa, they think peaceful retirement in a safe neighborhood with a world-class resort and spa. However, the Omni La Costa Resort and Spa plays very loud music, shows movies outside that we can hear inside our homes with the windows closed, the TVs on, and the air conditioning running. We've communicated with the resort community relations person with little result because the city of Carlsbad does not have a noise ordinance to enforce, and calling the police does not help. Code enforcement tells us that there is nothing to enforce. The city does, however, have a noise manual, which could be amended to include noise annoyances in residential neighborhoods. Many of my neighbors have endured this nuisance for longer than I have, and we have decibel readings of noise levels to support our request. If any of us were to blast loud music for hours at a time, we would be a public nuisance, we would be disturbing the peace, the police would ask us to turn it down, and for us to show a little respect for our neighbors. There seems to be an unwillingness on the part of the resort to compromise. The Omni Resort and Spa does not have more rights than the rest of us to reverberate noise at will throughout our neighborhood. The La Costa Resort's guests' entertainment needs and expectations should not take precedent over our request for civility, respect, common decency, peace, and quiet. I infer nothing in the words golf, resort, spa, or Deepak Chopra that hint at noisy venue. We would like to see a noise moratorium placed on the resort until they can produce a community noise impact assessment study. If an outdoor stadium was to be built in La Costa, there would be such an impact study done in advance. Perhaps guidelines for community noise impact assessment and mitigation can also be created. At the very least, we implore you to include a noise ordinance in the city in the revised general plan. Hopefully, you will see the benefit of creating such an ordinance because it is good for our city, our ears, and it is in line with the core community values identified in the Carlsbad Community Vision. I continue to implore you to consider a citywide noise ordinance, place the peace of mind of voting citizens above any corporate revenue or profits. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Hi, Planning Commissioners, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Paige DeCino. I live in Carlsbad for 35 years. I'm here to urge the city to adopt two worthwhile endeavors to the general plan and climate action plan, one of which you've heard many times before. That's the first is the goal to include 100% clean energy in the city by 2035. Many other progressive cities, like you've heard, San Diego, have already done this in order to cut back on our greenhouse gas emissions. This would not be a mandate, but it would be establish a policy framework that would help guide other related actions and support adaptive management as the CAP gets implemented. The second one I haven't heard anyone speak of yet today, and that's to formally support the concept of citizen science in the city. According to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, quote, citizen science typically refers to research collaboration between scientists and volunteers, particularly but not exclusively to expand opportunities for scientific data collection and to provide access to scientific information for community members, unquote. Citizen science can also include citizens making their own observations of the world around them. Henry David Thoreau, 150 years ago, is a good example. His notebooks are still being used to document climate change. Citizen science also permits the democratization of science as a way for individuals to learn and connect with their world around them. And see, science is not something that just scientists do, but everyone can do. It nurtures curiosity and a sense of place and responsibility. Now, I'm trained as a research scientist, and I've been a high school science teacher for many years. But what I consider most important to what I do now is citizen science. I do water quality testing. I work with the San Diego tracking team to do wildlife monitoring and that kind of thing. In January, Preserve Calavera, in conjunction with UCSD, will be offering the UC Cooperative Extension Certification Program for California naturalists. Citizen science is an integral part of this program as a way of inspiring participants to connect with their environment and continue their volunteer efforts beyond the certification class. Carlsbad has a fine record of resident volunteers, so making use of citizen science naturally fits in with Carlsbad vision, while allowing projects to be completed in the city that the city really doesn't have the manpower to do so right now. Examples of possible projects include native plant cataloging, invasive plant surveys, stream monitoring, and adopting wildlife movement pinch points, which we're actually going with the city right now. Inclusion of this idea into the general plan would be a win-win proposition. The city can get scientific data, and resident volunteers are accomplishing valuable. Okay, thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Councilman and Planning Commissioners, staff, and the consultants. My name is Alan Sweet, and I live in the northwest quadrant of the city and have for 28 years. I've been involved in a variety of civic activities along the way, including having the privilege of serving on the EC3 committee. Thank you for the one that appointed me. And I tried to make an input. The documents which you have in front of you generally reflect the consensus of that group. Wasn't to say I agreed with every line in it, but generally reflected the consensus of that group. But there was one part which I had trouble with, including the fact that we didn't actually talk about it in the group. Now, I will tell you what we did talk about. We talked about trails, and we talked about biking. And I support both of those activities. I try to walk every day. But we didn't talk about giving them priority over vehicles. And that bothers me. There are letters in the file which I don't feel necessary to repeat. But I did have an interesting thing that happened on a trip. I read about how people travel in Germany. And we think of it as a place that has mass transit, that's environmentally sensitive, has high density and all that. And I will tell you that in Germany, that 3% of the people miles are by foot, 3% are by bicycle, 7% by bus, 7% by train, 80% by auto or motorcycle. Let's not overestimate what bicycles and walking will accomplish for us. I worry about that a great deal. And so that was kind of my point I want to make, and to be sensitive to it. And we're not developed for mass transit to the degree that Germany is. It will take us a long time to get to where they are now. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Natalie Shapiro. I'm speaking on behalf of Buena Vista Audubon Society, and these comments are an addendum to earlier comments submitted by email by our organization. So first I want to comment on open space. The 1986 Growth Management Plan there said that there would be 40% open space at build-out, and neither the draft GP nor the revisions to the DEIR mention this 40%. So this is a goal, but not a requirement. But in the past, this number was repeated with an expectation the city would work towards that goal. So this is a really good goal, we feel. Let's keep it. And city staff had said that they may work towards this goal, but it may be a bit short. So a bit short, just to keep that in mind, 1% of open space is 250 acres. So even 1%, less than 40%, is significant. And as far as a climate action plan, the city of San Diego and other California cities, such as San Francisco, and some of the communities in the LA area have set a goal or a target to achieve 100% renewable electricity by 2035 citywide. I think we should have that goal in Carlsbad. I think we could do that if other cities are, including San Diego. And then Chapter 5 of the revisions to the CAP state that Chapter 3 and 4 contain a comprehensive set of goals and enforceable measures and actions to meet the goals. And I looked really hard to find these. I see lists of measures and associated actions, which are great, but there weren't any enforceable measures on how to measure success and how well goals and actions are working. We need something like this to give it teeth and know if we're doing a good job. And then as far as bicycling, many of the members of Buena Vista Audubon, including myself, commute to work. So I really appreciate you and thank you for proposing more bicycle lanes and enhancement of roads for bicycling. However, we need more than just creating bike lanes. We need education and incentives to bicycle. I really like your idea in the document about businesses providing incentives to encourage patrons and employees to bicycle. I would suggest that the city include some incentives for bicycling also. So that's it. I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, and the Planning Department. You've done fantastic work. My name is Catherine Cato. I'm belong to the Cato Family Limited Partnership property. I grew up here in Carlsbad. I went to Buena Vista Elementary School, Carlsbad High School. I remember when the Agua Hedionda Lagoon had clams in it and you could go clamming. The instructions to come to Carlsbad were before the 5 freeway. They used to say, come down the Highway 1 and turn left at the Twin Inns where the roosters were. There were pheasants on the property where we, down the street from the property where we are now. That's where the terraces of Carlsbad would be. The Kelly family probably brought them there. My concerns are the balance of the number of housing units in the northeast quadrant. They seem to be approved as the next one in line would get the number of units, whatever they applied for. And with this recent approval of the College Boulevard extension, our property will be paying for that road, but in the end, we don't know if we will ever see the number of units to cover the cost of having to pay for that road, and the road doesn't also come to our property, so we will probably have to install another portion of road, and then we don't have any guarantee that there will be any units left in the future for us. So I'm objecting to the Robertson Ranch proposal, which you changed from commercial to residential, like Rancho Carlsbad was saying. They had fought that, and it was promised to them that it would remain commercial, and then, of course, years later, things change. So I hope you listen to my concerns. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I was out doing some citizen science this morning, testing our creeks with Paige, and it's never good news. We have bacterially impaired creeks. And I do want to say it wasn't a fair process. I read the general plan, and it seemed like the people who were already talking to developers were able to secure the upzoning of their property, There's a lot of landowners out there. I can think of 3 who were uninformed about this process and weren't giving an upzoning to their property. So I don't know what drove it, but it wasn't done across the city. But let's just back up a little bit. So we have this 1986 growth management plan that capped the number of dwelling units, residential dwelling units in each quadrant of the city. But it doesn't actually mean that that many need to be built. The developments went in under the growth control point with less units because that was being built since 1986. The excess units went into the EDBU, the excess dwelling unit bank, and people have been able to increase densities by drawing upon that. That number can be zeroed at any time, and I would encourage you to zero that number instead of trying to cram every single buildable unit in the few remaining lands in our city. We're already going to take 7.5 million more commercial and industrial square feet. We're already going to take almost twice the number of hotel rooms. But in the residential, it's really putting an impact on creating better neighborhood parks, setting aside more land for people to use. And you have a big problem in the northeast quadrant. When you allowed twice of what was originally zoned in Quarry Creek, we now have a situation in this general plan where I believe it's 323 units over the 1986 growth management cap for my quadrant of the city. I fully expected that to be resolved before we got to this point. But they keep saying, well, we're going to do that later. We're going to do that later. Well, there is no later. This needed to be done before this public hearing. So how can you upzone arbitrarily certain parcels in our quadrant? And so you're giving these people the right to develop. You're setting yourself up for legal battles because you're going to go over this limit. I just don't get this. This needs to really go back to the drawing table. It needs to be a more equitable process. You need to identify where those 323 units are coming out. And you need to actually ask yourself, what do my constituents want? What do the people driving these ever increasingly crowded streets want in our city?
And we thank you very much.
You broke it, you own it, you need to fix it.
Good afternoon. My name is Socorro Anderson, and I live at 3420 Don Juan, which is Rancho Carlsbad. I have been activist for affordable housing for many, many years. I am past president of Civic Action, which was a nonprofit organization composed of clergy who were listening to the issues of affordable housing and the families in North County, not just Carlsbad. I was president from 2001, 2005, and I think most of you remember when I spoke before council in reference to the dwelling situation that got slashed. But anyway, that's past history. What I want to say is that kudos to housing. I am not opposing anything other than making sure that the city complies with state law, and that is to have enough affordable housing for our residents here in Carlsbad. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about the values of Carlsbad. Well, the values of our poor, or those that are earning for $3,000 to $40,000 a year, is not any different than those earning over $100,000 a year that are living in the city. The 30 to 40 encompasses our seniors, our veterans. I'm also president of La Posada, which is a homeless shelter, which is now being transformed into a transitional housing because 6% of the residents coming through are veterans. They are our veterans. They served in our country. They served to protect us. And we should have enough affordable housing to transition them into good housing. Our seniors who are on fixed income, a lot of them are living in the downtown area. We have several homes there, affordable housing there, and they choose to live in the downtown area because it's close to transit, it's close to stores they can walk to. A majority of them, we talk about traffic, they don't drive. They're not on our streets. I live in Rancho Carlsbad, and I'm looking forward to moving into the village as I get older, because there you go 3 miles one way and 3 miles the other way to get to a store. When you get older that you don't drive, you rely on family, you rely on neighbors. And I am really for affordable housing in the downtown. And I've dealt with the people's not in my backyard attitude for the last 20 years, over 20 years.
And we thank you, Socorro.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ron Ashman, Crew Engineering and Surveying, 5725 Kearney Villa Road in San Diego. I'm here on behalf of the Schreiber Trust, the owners of the Ponto Mini Storage in the Ponto Basin. And just briefly, I've submitted a letter that Mr. Schreiber's interests. We're here to show our support for the thoughtful and considerate efforts of the City of Carlsbad to try to bring together the divergent interests that can culminate in a general plan update. Mr. Schreiber's anticipation was that the Ponto Beachfront Village Vision Plan would be the guiding principle for what gets done in that area. And he had some questions about the split designations and zoning on its assemblage of ownership there. He has about 7 lots. But we understand that that might be the path to flexibility that allows us to try to grapple with the many and varied infrastructure and circulation patterns in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Commissioners. I'm here this morning before you. My name is Jack Henthorne. My address is 1902 Wright Place, Suite 200 here in Carlsbad. And I'm here representing Integral Communities, the owner of property that was proposed for redesignation from planned industrial to residential. That property was referred to as Palomar Oaks West. The site was previously included in evaluation through the EIR, so it's been addressed in there. You've also received a handout that is kind of a printout of a PowerPoint presentation that we had anticipated to present, but it doesn't relate to the flow of my presentation now. So in any event, as noted by the staff, there were 4 criteria that were used to evaluate the sites proposed for land use change. 2 of those criteria we concur with the staff on, and that is the fact that if this site was approved, it would in fact contribute to affordable housing, and the site is well located in terms of service availability, employment centers, and things of that nature. It is also important to note that the number of units requested in this change are available in the balance of the EDUB as discussed by your staff earlier. And it doesn't rely on any of the units that are hung up with the Coastal Commission or might come from unrealized development potential. The criterion that I would like to discuss relate to land use compatibility concerns and questions relating to fire, flood, and hazardous material releases. This site is bordered on 3 sides by open space, or on 3 sides by open space, 2 sides by Encinas Creek, and on the other side by the newly completed Fairfield Inns project. There's very little opportunity there for conflict with those uses from residential usage. As a matter of fact, residential usage would probably be preferable. The final point that I'd like to address is the position that the site will result in employment loss. The site has sat there developed for nearly 30 years because of its poor configuration and lack of really good access and buffers that further complicate the development of the site. It hasn't been developed, so it has not contributed to your employment base. We think that if the site was changed to residential, it would offer workforce housing opportunities, and through the provision of those opportunities, along with tax revenues from property taxes and sales tax generation, we think that the site would be ideal for residential usage. So with that, I complete my presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Gil Miltenberger with Integral Communities. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, Planning Commissioners, and staff for this opportunity to talk about our project, Palomar Oaks West. We are the owners of Palomar Oaks West property, as well as the applicant and builder. A quick snapshot of Integral. We are an integrated residential builder, and we includes apartments. We have over 1,500 units in our portfolio. One of our projects you might know of is Palomar Station. It's located in San Marcos, right across from Palomar College. Just recently built 370 units. When the staff report came out, it recommended, to our surprise, that revert back from the residential R30 to planned industrial. And so we're here to really request that it would be designated as residential R30 as it was circulated. I'd like to highlight a point that Jack had made, is this property has sat there for 30 years, even though it had been subdivided, it was graded, all utilities stubbed in with public streets. If you drive by at night, the street lights are actually on. So, and during these 30 years, we've been through some of the largest real estate booms, and nothing. This property's always been passed by, but something better. There's got to be something wrong with it. General plans are there to clean up and take underutilized properties to do something with them. And why is that it just sat there for 30 years? Well, it's inadequate for office and industrial, one, because it's isolated from the core employment centers. It's on the fringe. It is very narrow, not conducive for office or industrial building configurations. Very narrow. Number three, the site sits below Palomar Airport Road a bit, and so the visibility is poor. Four, it is surrounded by residential and open space. But we feel this is actually an opportunity for smart growth residential. It's located next to Carlsbad's largest employment center. It's located on Palomar Airport Road, the prime arterial going east-west, which is located, has plenty of public transportation, and really isn't this textbook smart growth. I am sure aware that there is a severe lack of workforce housing that is well located in Carlsbad. What is workforce housing? It's housing that is 60 to 120% of the area's median income. And so our goal is that Carlsbad's goal is to retain, expand, and attract employers. How do you do that? Well, one is having workforce housing close by. If there's no land use change, no increase in property taxes, no sales tax, no jobs. If there's a R30 designation created, you'll have workforce housing, and also 20% of the units would be affordable. As a race compatibility, we've actually submitted reports and such to staff stating that and showing that there's no hazardous material or airborne type things around us. We have office buildings, we have the Fairfield Hotel, we have residential bias. We don't really have hazardous material right around us. So with that, I'll conclude. I respectfully request that Palomar Oaks West remain as residential R30 as contemplated in the general plan that was circulated. Thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you very much for the work you have done for our city. It's amazing. I'm not as good a speaker as everyone else here, that's for sure. My name is Evelyn Montalbano. I live at 2404 La Costa Avenue, and actually I'd just like to say that the city needs to inform the public of why we cannot always have in all of our plants 100% renewable clean energy. An article in the June 13, 2015 edition of The Economist states, and I am paraphrasing, for solar power to keep increasing its share of electricity generation, there needs to be significant progress in energy storage because Renewable clean energy power sources are intermittent. Therefore, our power grids cannot support this source of inconsistent, unstable energy. Only by building the grids to operate with this intermittent power, and if significant progress is made in energy storage for renewable sources, can this dream become a reality. Right now, it is a dream and does not work in the real world. Consequently, we need to use the plentiful, consistent natural gas that we have to power our plants. No one here with whom I have spoken really understands that. I had dental surgery yesterday, so you'll have to forgive me. I am suffering. Anyway, until the technology is developed to change these facts, we have to accept those issues. And as I said, with everyone with whom I have spoken here, they do not understand that. Anyway, to the next issue. As far as 40% open space, that is massive. A park in every neighborhood is short-sighted. The golden years are over. Today, the economy is such that all states and cities struggle for revenue. The 21st century demands that we use our resources wisely. For example, oil, gas, and revenue-producing development. Parks and recreational facilities are wonderful. I would love to live in a parkland. However, the days of sprawling suburbia are no longer desirable, nor is it viable. We need to be wise and reasonable and live in today's world. That said, smart planning for quality of life is important. Preserving the small-town, beachy vibe of Carlsbad is paramount. I do believe the updated general plan strives and succeeds in that direction. Now, in the 21st century, do you really want to hold on to goals that were implied as a lofty ideal decades ago and not recognize that the world is changing? Now, all of those parks and open space need funding.
I need to thank you, and
You're welcome.
It's been very well stated.
All right, thank you.
I thought she was an excellent speaker. My name is Oscar Urenga. I'm with Shop Off Realty Investments. We're the owner's representative and applicant on the Ponto Beachfront project in South Carlsbad. We want to confirm our support for the R23 designation on the eastern side of our property, not R30 as it was shown in the original preferred plan. I think there's some confusion about that. But we would like to request that the city consider changing the western designation from general commercial to GC/R30. Here's why. The original Ponto Beachfront Village Vision Plan slated that site for mixed use. Unfortunately, you don't have a mixed use designation. You chose GC as a substitute. We believe that GC/R30 accomplishes the tenets of that old plan. The city has used split designations elsewhere, and we think it's a good fit here. Unfortunately, our site is not a great commercial corner due to the wild traffic fluctuations between summer and winter, weekday and weekend. We also have slightly inconvenient access. However, we are dedicated to making this the best commercial corner that it can be. Our latest market study indicates that the site attributes and retailing dynamics can only support 10,000 square feet of commercial, but we're going on a limb and proposing 13,000 square feet with a 36,000 square foot public plaza. We've submitted our application to the city. Your economic development manager reviewed our proposal and responded with, and I quote, "The amount of retail commercial space proposed is adequate based on the marketplace." The GC/R30 split designation would generate less traffic than GC, and we think that is what the community ultimately wants. So your EIR for Envision Carlsbad would not be compromised. I'll be in the back of the room with business cards if anybody's interested in speaking with me about the project. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Do you want to reset the clock? Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, planning commissioners. I'm Michael McSweeney. I'm the Senior Public Policy Advisor for the Building Industry Association. I had to fill out the card oppose, but I wanted to start with the good. Some of your increase in densities on your zoning is good because it's going to help comply with AB 32 and SB 375. I'm sure that all of you are aware, because I've talked to all of you, about the Point Loma Nazarene study, which pointed out that in Carlsbad, 42 to 46% of the cost of a new dwelling unit is related directly to the governmental approval process. That study asks for a 3 to 5% rollback. And when I say rollback, meaning efficiencies in those processes. It'll create more housing. And when I watch staff's presentation, the housing element requirement is to remove constraints. Impediments to building is a constraint. So the question I've got is, where are children and grandchildren going to live in Carlsbad? When you have a process that's too long, an inclusionary housing burden that's too burdensome on the market rate that has to pay for it, and you have lost units because community backlash or decide not to build, all of those have a cost. And you can refer to the letter that we submitted yesterday. So as far as inclusionary housing, let's look at that for just a second. And do we really want the tail to wag the dog? What we've been advocating, working with your staff for over a year, is what is the most efficient way to do this? Because I think we owe it to the residents of Carlsbad. Because if we do it a little here, and just shrug our shoulders and say, well, it costs a lot of money to do this, the people that are really hurt are the people that don't get units. So we're advocating for efficiencies, maximizing building affordable housing production while minimizing the burden on the market rate housing production. I want to conclude by just asking you this. If things don't change, Carlsbad becomes an enclave for the wealthy. And your housing affordability will look kind of like a champagne glass. All the wealthy up here, what little tiny bit of middle class, and then everybody else needs subsidized housing. And just for you to consider for a second that in San Francisco today, a family of 4 that earns $114,000 qualifies for subsidized housing. That's the wrong direction to go. We want to use the expertise of the people in the Building Industry Association to help you try and solve this problem and make it equitable for everybody and produce the units that are desperately needed. Thank you.
Mayor Hall and Carlsbad City Council and the Planning Commission. My name is Jackie Peacock, and I'm a third-generation San Diegan, and I've lived in Carlsbad for 19 years. I want to thank you for this opportunity to let everyone voice their concerns. I know we're told that the science is settled regarding climate change, but I would recommend that everyone read the Climate Change Reconsidered by the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change. And I'm a free market thinker and an accountant, and my main concerns with the Climate Action Plan is that there's no scientific balance in the report, and there's no cost-benefit analysis on the recommendations in the plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Fred Sanquist, 6408 Crossbow Court in Carlsbad, and also president of Bataquitos Lagoon Foundation, which I'd like to speak for as well. I had the pleasure of serving on the EC3 committee for 3+ years, and for somebody that joined Carlsbad's Citizens and Community in 2001, I found it an excellent opportunity to learn not only the history of Carlsbad, but how complex the planning process is. And I commend the staff over those years and leading up to this point in getting the general plan update to include a lot of that input, and a very complicated dialogue between all the different factions. And I have to say, coming out of that, I have a very significant appreciation for how complex that is, and you've heard a lot of that this morning. I also was very much interested in the envision the Carlsbad, the beachfront vision plan, and the foundation provided a lot of information for that. And I think that's an area that I was pleased during our discussion on EC3 of how we spent a fair amount of time on the southwest area and along the coast, and I think that's significant. That's an area within Carlsbad that I think has a lot of potential over the next, the years that this general plan is going to represent. The linear park I like. We spent a lot of time on how to do that and trying to fit it into the various parts of the planning process and what that vision should look like. The couple of areas in the overall that I think I'd like to see, and it's a little getting maybe down a little bit into the nitty-gritty, but is on the enforcement and our public safety. I think we need to spend some time and commit to coming up with a strategy that leads to having rangers, the involvement of our volunteers, the city, police, fire department in terms of responding to emergencies. And specifically at Bataquitas, we've had a lot of incidences where people are breaking in, violation of the rules of the ecological reserve. And I have to say the police have been very good working with us as best we can to try and stem that flow of, that's, I think, endangering our community. So I'd like to commend you. I'd like to be involved in the southwest area, from the foundation standpoint, in seeing that come to fruition. I think that's a big potential, and we can have a good balance between open space, the environment, as well as the commercial opportunities for our citizens. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Gigi Orlowski. Before my time ticks away, I want to quickly say that I'm 100% for setting the goal of achieving 100% renewable energy in Carlsbad by 2035, if not sooner. I'm 100% behind implementing community choice energy in Carlsbad, and the sooner the better. And I am 100% for Carlsbad retaining its 40% open space goal in the new general plan. I'm also, as many of you know from previous civic action here in Carlsbad, consider myself 100% a citizen of Carlsbad. So as a matter of civic pride, I want to see Carlsbad do more than set 100% renewable energy goal in its climate action plan. I want to see Carlsbad become the renewable energy leader in this region. Now, achieving 100% renewable energy by 2035 is no pipe dream. The renewable energy revolution is here. It is now. It is an enormous, I can't emphasize this enough, an enormous opportunity for Carlsbad. I brought along a few articles I read recently. Here's one from Business Insider. There is a $12 trillion revolution taking place in the energy market. This is dated June 24th. Talks all about how natural gas is fleeting and fossil fuel and renewable energies are quickly taking over. Here's another one from July 5th. Solar, and this is from the Motley Fool. Solar energy revolution past the point of no return. And this one talks about how the price per kilowatt of solar is going down to less than $1 per kilowatt hour very soon. Okay, here's another one. Fossil fuels. This is from Bloomberg Business. Fossil fuels just lost the race against renewables. This is dated April 14th. This is the beginning of the end. It talks about the race for renewables. Energy has passed a turning point. The world is now the whole energy sector is now going toward renewables. Here's one more. This is dated May 14th, and it's from Clean Technica. Today's solar panels can power the world. This is from an MIT study. They talk about if the The $548 billion in subsidies that currently go to the fossil fuel industries were transferred to the renewable energy.
And we would like to thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hall, council members, Chairman Scully, Planning Commission. My name is Deanne Weimer. I am here today on behalf of the Aviara Premier Collection. And we would first of all like to say thank you very much for keeping the zoning in our area along Poinsettia as it is. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate that and how much that will do for our community. We do have 3 issues that we are, as an association, concerned with, and we'd like to raise them with you at this time. The first issue is that, as you are probably aware, Ambrosia was targeted as one of the 15 most dangerous areas or intersections in the city a few years back, and there was a plan to fix that problem by widening the sidewalk along Ambrosia and by installing some trails to the Dove Library and to some other areas. All of this at a cost of about $300,000. We're concerned that the emphasis on mobility and livable streets, we don't see any of this original plan percolating back up in this general plan, and so we would like you to please consider to make sure that that's part of this livable street concept, because it would solve a serious problem for our community. The other 2 areas that we'd like to address involve open space. We have received the request from you to rezone some of these local facilities management zone changes that would take bits and pieces of property, primarily our small open space areas that are used by the fire trucks to access the open space and the trails in the event of a fire, such as last year, and the monument areas as well, as a form of under the local facilities management zone as part of that 15% fulfillment for open space requirement. We think that's sort of comparable to taking a 140-character tweet and comparing it with War and Peace. One is literature, one is not. One is open space, one is not. And finally, the issue of parks, which have been addressed by many who have come before me today. We very much value the parkland that we have in the southwest quadrant. We don't really see Veterans Park as being something that is part of our community or something that we can walk to and actually survive the walk or even survive the bicycle ride to Veterans Park. So we would greatly appreciate it if you could take an opportunity to relook at our area and to put in some additional parkland, as we have enjoyed quite a bit of growth in our area and have a population that heavily uses the park of space that we have in this community. And finally, there is an issue of we maintain about 200 acres of open space, and we do it without the benefit of a conservancy. We're concerned that some of the backfilling that's taking place is going to require some hardline management fencing to be placed in areas that have been open space, and this will be disadvantageous to the animals in our community. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, Planning Commission. It's taken us a long time to get here, not just the 5 years on this general plan, but all the years before that to make Carlsbad the community that it is today. But today we're really planning for the future. What will Carlsbad be like for our children and grandchildren? This plan will be your legacy. So we ask you to keep 2 numbers in mind as you think about this legacy, 40% and 100%. 100% needs to be your goal for clean energy. That single goal will help ensure that Carlsbad achieves its fair share of greenhouse gas reductions, and that we all help save our planet from the catastrophic impacts of climate change. That is a noble goal. 40%, of course, is a long-standing goal for open space at build-out. We aren't asking you to change direction on that, to do anything that this city has not committed to do for years, to raise the bar, to mortgage the farm, to do any of that. We're simply asking you to honor the promise that's been made for the last 30 years, and to do that by putting the goal in your open general plan and stating it as a goal. It's an aspirational goal. It's something that you strive for and make a good faith effort to achieve. And we know that this takes a team effort. We want you to be part of that team because we know we have a much greater chance of success if you are part of that team. And while we work to preserve more land, we also need to do a better job of caring for the natural lands that we do have. Your staff recently completed an important wildlife corridor study, and we've learned that there's many small things that can be done to reduce the number of critters that are killed simply trying to cross a road. We need to do a better job of patrolling our natural lands to control the 1% of people that cause problems with damaging these areas and create health and safety problems for the other 99% who love these lands. We need to give Mother Nature a hand. That's why we helped pay for your wildlife study and got a grant to restore land in Carlsbad. That also is a team effort. Please tell your staff that this also is your priority. 40% and 100%. Two noble goals. Let's make this general plan about more than building homes and hotel rooms and shopping centers. Let's make it about some things that really matter for your children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Mayor Hall and City Council members and Chairperson Scully and Planning Commissioners. We are Michael and Marja Selna, here to speak briefly about the Marja Acres property. Our address is 4901 El Camino Real, Carlsbad. The Marja Acres property has been held by Marja's family since 1951. We have been involved with the Envision Carlsbad process since 2011, and we believe the city has done an outstanding job of providing opportunities for citizens and landowners to make input during this general plan update process. You have an excellent staff. They have been, in every instance, responsive and informative. The Marja Acres site actually consists of two parcels, a 6-acre commercial parcel across El Camino Real from the Robertson Ranch development that's currently under construction, and a contiguous 14-acre residential parcel. We fully concur with the land use designation change that staff supports, as presented in Table 8.2 of the staff report, 8-12, pardon me. And we agree with the requirements that are outlined in that table. We submitted a letter last week expressing our support of staff's analysis and recommendations. Your approval of the actions that staff supports would actually help the city meet its housing element objectives. One of the key goals of the general plan is to provide a variety of housing types and density ranges to meet diverse demographic, economic, and social needs. Because the Marja Acres site fills a gap in the mid-density range, the property would assist the city in meeting this goal. Marja Acres would also help the city meet its mobility element objectives. The site provides pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to on-site commercial, job opportunities, a transportation corridor, and nearby school and park. In summary, the actions supported by staff regarding the Marja Acres property represent good land use planning, and we respectfully request your concurrence with the staff-supported changes to the land use designation and land use map, and that a motion be passed at the upcoming Planning Commission meeting to add a policy to the general plan consistent with Table 8-12 for the Marja property. Thank you for this opportunity to address you and to support what you and staff have done such an outstanding job in providing an open and constructive process in this general plan update. Thank you.
With that, this is a public hearing. I do not see anyone else standing to my left. Is there anyone else wishing to speak today on the general plan update? Okay. With that, then we're going to take about a 15-minute break. But if anyone in the audience is wishing to speak to something beyond the general plan update, we will need a speaker slip so I can give time here in the rest of the afternoon to hear you. So if you're wishing to speak on not the general plan update, but another topic that's not agendized, I will need a speaker slip filled out with the city clerk. So with that, we'll take a 15-minute break.